Thank you, Jesus, that you love being near us. And you don't just sit at a distance with some clipboard checking boxes. You actually draw close to us. And Lord, you know the things that we're carrying inside of us, like overstuffed backpacks that we just can't seem to always take off. I don't know how to set it down. You know the stuff that keeps me awake at night. Today I'm asking that you just help us to release things today. That as we look at you, open our eyes to see you clearly right here, right now, and by your Spirit's presence that you would do what only you can do, which is be the center of all of it and to meet us in this moment. Amen. Amen. I do have a few simple questions I want to open with. Do you ever worry about things? Are you a person who worries? Is there anyone here who doesn't really worry about things? Susan doesn't worry about things. And if you thought you should not admit this in church, I just want you to relax. Don't worry about it. You're in good company. How many of you have ever worried about your health so much that you Googled the symptoms that you thought you had and convinced yourself that you had at least 3 rare tropical diseases? Anyone? Cancer. You've got cancer, yes. Yeah. Have you ever worried that people could actually hear your stomach growling sitting in church? Yeah. And now you're worried that I brought it up and everyone's going to be listening. Have any of you ever worried that you left the stove on when you left the house and it ruined your entire night out, that maybe you're going out or doing something? Meanwhile, you haven't actually cooked in 3 days. We got one there. Yeah, because it's happened to me. Here's a response if you want to give me one. What is the silliest thing that you've ever worried about? Looking back, it makes you laugh that you actually worried about it. You had your shirt on backwards. A jelly stain from breakfast, and you thought something had grown on you and you went to go seek medical attention. Oh boy. That happened to my cousin. He used to have this ear drainage, so he had a tube in his ear, but you put this putty in your ear. It had fallen out in the middle of the night, and it had landed on his leg somehow in the middle of the bed, and the next day he freaked out because there was a growth on his leg, and he couldn't pick it off. And so he actually went and saw a doctor for it, and as a teenager, and they're like, it's just this putty, and because it wasn't coming off for like days. But he didn't really want to pick at it because he thought it was some painful growth. Yeah, anyone else? Something made you worry, looking back now makes you laugh, that you actually worried about it?
When I was a little girl, I was about 4 or 5, and I tricked a kid down the street into giving me his crackers, and that bothered me for like 20 years until I saw him and apologized, and he's just laughing.
You tricked a kid for him to give you his crackers, and that caused you worry for the next 20 years.
He gave me his crackers, and I told him that I wasn't his friend.
So you apologized 20 years later.
I did.
I love that about you.
Worry about that.
I think that's awesome. That's a great one. Who else had their hand up? I saw, yeah.
I had a few minutes to get ready, and I was afraid we were going to be late for a concert. So I quickly put on my boots and we took off and got at the concert, and then I got into the light. I looked down at my shoes and I put the boot on the wrong foot.
You had the boots on the wrong feet.
So I just started laughing. I went to the restroom and changed it.
I love that. What did you worry about the most when you were a kid? Did anyone worry about a monster being under the bed? I worried about one being in the closet. I remember that one vividly. How about pop quizzes? How about your hair? Is my hair messed up? Chip, yours was looking fantastic today. No, I worry about it. It's got to be nice. It doesn't stop just because you have no hair. Come on. When I was a kid, I remember worrying whether or not someone would love me enough to marry me when I grew up. I worried about stuff like that. As a 12-year-old, I worried about that. What's something you wish you worried about less now? And just keep this one in your head. If you could trade one worry for peace in your life, that you just one single area that you didn't have to worry about anymore, what would that be? Like if I could just have one less thing. Is it finances? Would it be family? Would it be health? Would it be Netflix buffering at the exact moment the show gets good? It'll never happen. Is there something that you wish you could just let go of? And now you're worried because I brought it up that you're actually starting to think about it more and you've already checked out now. So this week I was thinking about, what if worry actually made a sound that we could hear? What if it was in this room? Would it be a low whisper? Would it be a restless murmur? Or would it start in this room? Would it sound like a swarm of bees or the hum of a power line? Or that awkward groan that we make when we see that gas prices have gone up yet again? And what if we could actually see it on the screen? Like if we had it listed and it started to go and start to scroll through us like the stock prices at Times Square, where, would you want to just dive under your chair? Because I think if I started to see the things that I worry about and maybe even had my name, this is what Kenny worries about, I would jump behind the drum kit right there and I don't know that I want you to know about the things that I worry about. I'd start to freak out. All of us, to one extent or another, some of us to greater, some of us to lesser, but there are things that we have that cause anxiety, and oftentimes it becomes the background noise of our life. You feel it, and you wonder, is the job going to vanish? Is there going to be something going on with our economy? Maybe it's something that's going to happen in the political. Maybe it's going to be something in the headlines. Maybe it'll affect Kathleen. Maybe it's not. Maybe it'll affect the whole country. Because if our personal life doesn't generate enough fear and anxiety, it can get bigger and bigger to what is going to happen in the world that we live in. I have a friend of mine who he's been working for years to finally buy a house. And, you kind of have that dream when you're younger. It sits in the back of your mind, like one day I'm going to have a place to call my own, and I'm going to raise the family. And so he and his wife, they did it. They started to go through the process of buying their own home. And 2 months later, they purchased a house. But 2 months later, the company that he worked for announced layoffs. And suddenly, instead of celebrating paint colors and backyard barbecues, he is now lying awake into the night trying to just run numbers. How do I make this work? And what if I can't pay the mortgage? And what if we lose this whole thing? And how is this going to affect my marriage and my dreams? And so we met up for lunch. And I took him out and I sat across from him, watching him just kind of pick at his sandwich. He just couldn't do much. Because there was no quick fix. There's no Bible verse. There's nothing that I have as a pastor that I could just say, here, let me solve this problem. Here's how we can make it all go away. We were just two guys. We were just sitting there and staring into this unknown question and trying to figure out, what do you do next? And what, if anything, can I do to help? And it's into that kind of feel, into that kind of a world, that Jesus drops words like cool water on parched lips when he says in Matthew chapter 6, he says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you'll wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than all of them? And can any of you, by worrying, even add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about your clothes? I mean, look at the flowers. See how the flowers of the field grow. They don't labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself, and each day has enough troubles of its own." And that's where I paused. And I started to imagine this crowd of Jesus that Jesus is speaking to, that he's sitting up on a hillside, and it's, by the end of this Sermon on the Mount, by the end of this message that he's giving those that are following him, these men and women that are hungry to say, "We want to give you our hearts and our lives. We want to walk the way that you walk. We want to live the way that you live, Jesus." And at the end he says, the crowds were amazed at his teaching because he taught as one who had authority. But I start to wonder, did these people in the crowd, did they have things that they were worried about? Or were they bringing all this fear and tension, or were these people that he's talking to, were they somehow different than us, where they're living in some golden age where they didn't have stress or fear? And when Jesus says these beautiful words, they're just like, "Oh, yeah, oh, Lord, this is so good. Yeah, we'll think about the birds and the flowers while we're sipping our herbal tea. Yes, no, this is good. Oh, just, because we're just smiles and we're content right now." And what were the living conditions that these people were in, though? It was brutal. 95% of people in Israel lived in poverty. If you got sick, you didn't have urgent care. There was no Walgreens, nowhere to get any kind of medication. If you had pains, you suffered through it. You had pain, you had superstition, and maybe a neighbor with olive oil and not much hope. One superstition that they carried at the time was, if you went to the desert, they thought that demons haunted the desert at night and the wild spirits, so you would never want to travel at night. You would never want to be alone in deserted places. And that carried a different kind of anxiety that maybe we carry, because they also had now a spiritual anxiety. And they had these purification fears. Jews worried constantly about becoming ritually unclean, because maybe if I touch the wrong person, if I eat the wrong food, if I enter into the wrong place, even by accident, God might get mad at me, and I don't know that I'm impure, and so I will break this disconnect that I have with God. So I need to always make sure I'm doing everything I can to make sure that God and I are good and I'm ritually clean. All day, every day, I'm thinking about this. And then plagues, they weren't rare back then. They were a regular occurrence. They were like the drumbeat of dread. And a fever would start in one corner of a town, and within weeks, whole neighborhoods could be emptied out. It was the question that started to come, is this God's revenge for us for being a sinful people? Are we disobeying? Are we really that bad? Sometimes a third of the city would be gone before anyone even knew what was happening. So I imagine this fear growing, and every time I hear someone cough or sneeze in the house next to us, or the sound of wailing in the street, you didn't just worry about your job or your plans for the summer. You started to worry if your family would still be alive by harvest, if we even had a harvest. And for women, childbirth, it wasn't some sweet pastel moment that we imagine on this greeting card. It was a life or death event every single time. Half the women did not survive childbirth, which meant that every pregnancy was a mixture of hope and terror. And the average lifespan was the mid-30s. So if you were 40 years old, if you made it to 40, whoo, You weren't middle-aged. That means you're living right now on borrowed time. You're lucky. You're one of the elders of the community. And most never saw their grandkids. Most never saw their own kids grow up. And layered on top of all of that kind of personal fragility, there was this crushing weight of Rome. You had the soldiers who were patrolling the streets and collecting taxes that you couldn't afford. You had nothing to pay them with, and they were enforcing laws you didn't write, you didn't agree with, reminding you every day that this land is not ours, we don't have control of our lives, and you woke up every day knowing that your life is not in your hands. You have almost no control whether you live or die. And many, maybe some of your neighbors, maybe you yourself, maybe you were a slave. You had no rights. You had no choices. You just work, you sweat, and the fear of what the master might demand next of you. And this is the air that they breathed. Anxiety wasn't a mood disorder. It was the background music of everyone's life. So living conditions, they're down here. Anxiety, way up here. That's the crowd that Jesus looks eye to eye with everyone and says, hey, don't worry about your life. And I don't know about you, but something in me wants to lean in a little bit closer. Jesus isn't being naive. He doesn't just say this to people while they're sipping lattes in some climate-controlled home, where they're streaming podcasts on their commute to work. He said this to people with dirt under their fingernails, uncertainty inside their hearts and bellies, and oppression breathing down their necks. And yet he says, don't worry. That's interesting to me. See, living conditions over the last 2,000 years have skyrocketed. We're physically healthier, wealthier, we're better educated. Our lifespan is expanded. We've got cars that tell us when you're too close to the white line. We have refrigerators that order milk for us ahead of time. And we've got WebMD, which is basically a service to convince you that you're going to die by Tuesday. And we've seen and done things people in the day of Jesus could never dream of. We have indoor plumbing. That alone. If you went back and told someone in the first century, one day, I want to give you hope. You're going to have these rooms in your house with these little white thrones in it, and that's going to whoosh away your business. Their minds right there would have been blown. And yet, while living conditions have shot up, anxiety hasn't gone down. Anxiety has actually increased. Harvard did a study and found anxiety and depression are 10 times higher than what they were even 40 years ago. 10 times. And they said stress is at an all-time high. Congratulations, humanity. You've done it again. You have antibiotics, electricity, airplanes, and the iPhone, and you have perfected the panic attack. Good for you. And even this week, as I'm working, kind of processing and working on what I'm writing here, I found myself worrying about a sermon about anxiety. It started to make me anxious, and it's like I was getting ambushed by my own outline, and it left me unsettled because the truth is, sometimes when I hear Jesus' words about worry, it doesn't do me any good. It doesn't actually help. When Jesus says to not worry, I start to freak out a little bit because it's not doing anything. I don't suddenly feel calmer and better. I'm feeling more anxious, like I'm totally blowing this thing. I'm doing it wrong. I don't know how to do this. And then the song starts to play in my head. Here's a little song I wrote. You might sing it note for note, but don't worry. Come on, sing with me. Be happy. Don't worry, be happy. Don't worry. No one else, just me. All right. And then Jesus says, what I want you to do is I want you to look at the bird. Whatever. It's a catchy tune. It makes me smile, but it doesn't fix anything that's going on in my life. It doesn't change anything. It's like telling a person drowning in the deep end of the pool, just relax, you're going to be fine. Maybe, but I'm still freaking out and I really still can drown. Thanks for the tip. Doesn't help. If you're having a day where your storm starts to feel just, tossed, life seems to be growing, when pain feels like it's pushing down on your chest and clenching you with fingers digging into you, and stress is buzzing in your brain like a hive of bees, and that kind of advice from Jesus where he's like, don't worry, just look at the bees, look at the flowers, it is actually for me more irritating. And then I'm like, am I allowed to say that I get irritated by Jesus? Jesus, you irritate me. And really, look at the bird, look at the flower. What I really need is something far stronger than a Hallmark card right now, because I don't know that your words are having any effect in me, and I don't know that I know how to even confess that. Because there's a risk. What I often might do is I will dismiss the words of Jesus at this point. It's like okay, you're on the station, don't worry. And then I'm like, yeah. We're going to find a different station. Give me news, radio, give me anything else, because I don't want to listen to these things that are telling me about something I don't know how to do. Or what some people do is they don't dismiss it. What they turn it into is a passive faith. Well, Jesus said the birds, don't sow and reap, so I don't need to do anything. I just need to relax more, and I just need to, let go and let God, and I'm just going to give it all up. And then when we use Jesus' words as this hall pass for passivity, we actually start avoiding the things that God says, I am wanting to invite you and to lean into and to step into. The problem isn't that God won't provide. The problem is that we're calling it avoidance faith. Jesus doesn't tell us to admire birds because they're lazy. He's saying, consider here. I want you to consider them. I want you to watch them closely. And if you were to actually watch birds, one of the first things you notice is that there's nothing passive about the birds. They're in motion from dawn to dusk. They're scratching, they're pecking, they're hunting, they're looking for worms, they're building nests. They're very active. And I'm not even a bird guy. And in my backyard, I've got hummingbirds that are doing these dive bombs. I've got woodpeckers that are hammering on our concrete siding that looks like wood. I don't understand why they go for it, because it's got to be hurting him, and he's not making any progress. And it's like 6 a.m. when we're all in the house, and suddenly the whole house vibrates. I don't understand it. And then you got this blue heron that's croaking like a cranky neighbor with this HOA problem when your grass is too long. And my cat used to sit by the back window just watching them. It's like this 24-hour bird channel with the tail twitching, and the cat would go, and I don't even understand that. And then we still have the big birds that are out in the backyard, and you've got this eagle nest, and you got the eagles that are soaring and scanning for fish, and now the osprey are moving in, and I don't understand what's going on with the dynamics of between these other birds, and they're going into the rivers, and I see them even grabbing snakes out of the grass. They're really good. And I'm like, man, these guys are crazy. And they're not passive creatures, none of them. And they're focused, they're determined, they're relentless, and they work, they move, they stretch their wings, and they fly into the wing, and they soar, and they're amazing. I love living in Cathlamet for that alone, just to see this going on. They're some of the busiest creatures in the world, and they don't sit around just kind of wringing their bird feathers going, wow, what about tomorrow? Don't know if I'm going to see another vole or mole to eat. They're working. They just don't worry. I go, why don't they worry? Okay, because they're birds. I don't know that God designed them to worry, and they're not scrolling through the headlines. They don't know about inflation, global conflict, or my 401k. They just know what it is that they were made to do. Somehow there's food, somehow there's shelter, somehow they just live and continue to thrive. And then Jesus points us to Matthew 6:26. Are you not much more valuable than they? I go, okay, how do we be honest about this? Because when I meet someone who doesn't worry, sometimes it's not because they're deeply anchored in God. Sometimes it's because they don't worry is because they're just clueless. My mom used to call them cheerful idiots. They just kind of float through life smiling, but it's not faith. It's that they don't even look up to see the storm clouds. I saw a t-shirt once that said, if you're not deeply worried and afraid, then you're not paying attention. And there's some truth to that, a little bit. There is some, because we are paying attention, and because of that, we see the pain in the world around us, and we know how fragile things can be. But when Jesus invites us in, what he's inviting us into is not cluelessness, it's not passivity, it's not bumper sticker faith, it's something else that Jesus is trying to bring us into and help us to grasp. It's something I think that's deeper, it's riskier, and I think it's more freeing. When I look at Jesus, I don't believe for a moment that he's in denial about what's happening around us. He's Jesus. He's not naive. He's not sipping herbal tea on some Galilean hillside saying, everything's fine, just manifest good vibes. He knows exactly how brutal life can be. He grew up in poverty. He's the son of a carpenter in a town so small and insignificant that people would laugh when they heard where Jesus came from. You're from Nazareth? What good can come from there? Nothing. He lived in an oppressed land under Roman soldiers with swords on their hips and boots on the necks of all the people. And the work that Jesus and his dad do, they were carpenters. And what that meant is they were people who used their hands, and there's very little wood to be used for carpentry that we think of carpentry in Israel. Most likely that refers, because it's just people that work with their hands, a trade. And the biggest trade in that time in that region would have been stone carvers. And one of the greatest needs that the Romans had was for the road building. So Jesus was and there's a Roman city within a few miles of Nazareth, and that was the largest employer in the region, and that's where you got a job. You built roads, you built the buildings that Rome wanted in that region. And every coin in his pocket carried the image of Caesar to remind him every day, through your work, through your earnings, through your income, through everything that you have, this is not your land. We have taken it over. You are not in charge. You are not free. He was surrounded by sickness and lepers being pushed to the outskirts of the community, and the blind begging at city gates, and by mothers clutching children whose fevers never broke. And he wasn't shielded from it. He walked right into it. He knew grief. His friend Lazarus died, and he wept when he went to the tomb. He buried friends. He comforted a mother who had just lost her son. He stood face to face with human sorrow, and he never flinched or backed away from it. And he saw the injustice, religious leaders that were twisting God's law into this heavy religion, and Roman governors condemning the innocent with a shrug, and crowds ready to stone a woman to death in the street. And at the center of all that, he didn't just observe the suffering of the world, he carried it. He carried betrayal of friends, the sting of false accusations, the shame of nakedness, the weight of a wooden cross digging into his shoulders, and the sin of the world being put upon him that crushed the breath out of him. He wasn't a guru trying to sell us optimism. He was the Savior who stared suffering in the face and walked straight into it. Never once did Jesus say, well, if you follow me, you'll never have troubles again. He never said that. That wasn't his message. He didn't hand out a faith like it was some cosmic insurance policy. He would say the opposite. John 16:33, in this world, you're going to have trouble. Congratulations. Signed, sealed, it is just certain. But he didn't stop there, and thank God. He adds, but take heart. Have courage. I have overcome the world. And that becomes a bigger picture right there. That becomes an anchor, which means whatever else happens in this world to you and to me, and let's be real, painful things happen, nothing that matters, that eternally matters, is ever at risk. I'm going to say that one again because your soul needs to hear this one. Nothing that really matters, that eternally matters, is at risk. And if that is true, if Jesus really means it, then faith doesn't look like us sitting back and crossing our arms just waiting for God to wave a wand. It doesn't look like some passivity or denial or magical thinking. It looks like courage, and it starts to look like energy. It starts to look like stepping into the very thing that I need to face, because underneath it all, my life is safe in Christ. So I've got a silly example. I recently quit worrying about my car's brakes, my van's brakes. I love my green van. I have recently become free from that particular anxiety of my brakes, but not because I prayed every night, Lord, please stop these squealing brakes from grinding metal on metal, not for another year. It wasn't that. The miracle happened when I took it to the shop and they fixed it. Whew. I love it. It's amazing how my prayer life changes after a mechanic has worked on my vehicle. And that's kind of the point. Sometimes the freedom from worry doesn't come by praying harder, but by doing the very thing that you have been avoiding. Some things we can do something about in our lives. Other things we can't. You can get your brakes fixed. You can't fix the economy. You can schedule a test. You can't stop the aging process. You can apologize to a friend, but you can't rewrite the history between you two. And that's where Jesus' words in Matthew 6 start to land with such a force. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Worry about yesterday grows into regret. Those late night reruns of the what ifs. What if I just done this? And you're laying in bed replaying what if, or I should have, or why didn't I? And that starts to plant these seeds of shame and worry about tomorrow, and that start to blossom into fear, not about what will happen, but what might happen, what could happen. And then you've got this regret and fear, which equals you're pulled right out of the only space you actually get to live, which is today. So I'm going to just give 3 questions for today, not tomorrow, not yesterday, but today for us. Number 1, what are you worried about? We said it right at the beginning of the service. I even asked, can you name it? Can you put words to it? Some of you walked in here clutching it still like a carry-on luggage that you've just been rehearsing it all morning already. And for others, it's kind of fuzzier. More like, well, there's not a lot that I'm worried about, but there is a little static. It's kind of this low-grade hum you've lived with so long you don't even notice anymore. But if I was to sit still long enough, yeah, I could probably name it. I sense it. And so that's kind of the first work. Can you name it? And literally write a name to it. And then what can you do about it is the second thing. Not a magic thing, something you've avoided but maybe you need to face. Maybe it's to schedule that test. I had one of those, the kind of test that no one wants to talk about over dinner. Emma kept reminding me, have you called? Have you set up an appointment? Have you done anything about it? When are you going to do it? And I just kind of kept putting it off. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to know what's going on because that feels like it's too scary. And then I don't know how to deal with it because I don't know how to deal with that panic. So every night I would lie in bed. My brain turned over the horror of this marathon race that I thought I was about to have to run. What if it's cancer? What if it's spreading? What if I'm dying? What if I don't see my kids grow up? What if? And it just, and I started to just unravel. You know what finally calmed me down? Yeah, there you go. It was making the calling and getting a test, finding out the truth, and it wasn't cancer. Just letting you know, for at least. And for the first time in months, I could just feel my shoulders drop. I could feel a deep breath. And that worry line that I had crafted so well between right here I've got, it softened. Some of us here need to do some things that maybe we've been avoiding, that we've been putting off. And maybe it's confessing something that you've hidden, or maybe it's apologizing, or maybe it's forgiving someone. Maybe it's making a plan to start chipping away at that debt. And none of these things are easy things, but they're the things that will slice the cord of anxiety that are strangling so many of us. Third thing would be, what are you going to stop doing about it? Sometimes the reason we're exhausted is because we're trying to fix something that we can't fix. Oh, I wish you hadn't said that one. Still trying to control something you don't have control over, or you're not supposed to take control over. Still gripping tightly to something that you think you have to have in order to be okay. And the truth is, we'll never be free from worry until we let go of that thing that we decided we have to hold on to feel safe and to feel secure. So what is it for you? What is that thing that you have to finally breathe, to finally rest? Can you name it? Can you identify it? Many years ago, when I was just starting out in ministry as a pastor, I was in Ellensburg, Washington, and a group of people came to me who, they weren't going to be putting my picture by the blankets or on their fridge. They were loyal to the previous leader, the previous pastor, and they decided that the best way to move forward was to make sure that I was not the leader anymore. Because we like the previous pastor so much that we can't like this new guy or even give him a chance. And so they came up with a plan to sabotage the church. Sabotage the events that I was leading so that maybe things would fail and then people would blame me. And in their minds, if things blew up, I'd be exposed as such a bad leader and they'd be rid of me. And maybe we could even get the previous pastor back who didn't want to be there. He left. He didn't want to. That doesn't matter. I'll never forget one particular moment when it became crystal clear that no matter what I do, there's nothing I could ever do, no matter how hard I try. They're not going to be happy with me. They're not going to like me. They're always going to be gunning for me. And I was just crushed. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop replaying it in my mind. My chest felt like 1,000-pound weight was sitting on top of it. And worry was just spiraling me down into a pit. Do I have to move my family? Are we done? And there was gossip starting to spread about things that hadn't happened that they were convinced had because they wanted to believe it. Or I didn't solve the problems to things that it really wasn't my job to solve a problem for. And it was a very painful but freeing realization when I came to there's nothing I can do to fix this. I can't say enough. I can't tell the truth enough. I can't even address the lies because they're just so gossipy behind me. I don't even know how to defend myself. They just wanted me to leave. Maybe your time's done, Kenny. Maybe your time's done. There was no wand to wave that I could fix. There was no clever move to turn my enemies into fans and say, no, this is a safe place for all of us to grow. But somewhere in the middle of the wreckage, I came to believe that ultimately, nothing is at stake here. Even if I lost my job and I had to pack up and move, I would still be okay. Because nothing that really matters, that eternally matters, is at risk here. And when I let that kind of be held in front of me and I started to look at that, when I let go of my need to succeed in the eyes of other people, and when I let go of my need to cling to that role as a pastor, I could actually become a better leader because I wasn't living to please other people anymore. I wasn't frantically trying to hold my position or fight and tell people the things that you're hearing about me are not true. Or your expectations of what I'm supposed to be as a pastor, they're not even true. They're not even healthy expectations. That's not my job. To solve your problems. I was then able to start to feel free to lead with clarity and to say the things that I believe God is saying to me and growing in me. And now we love God eternally and to live into who God is shaping each of us to be in our unique selves. And it became freedom for me. And that's why letting go isn't passivity. It's not checking out. It's actually the opposite. It's when you let go of the thing that you think you have to have, you're free to give yourself more fully to the work of God, that God has said, this is what you have in front of you today. Lean into what you can control, your attitude, your ability to love the people around you, your ability to be proactive. So what is it for you? Could you name your worry, your fear? Whether it's your job or your kids or your marriage, the approval of people, and what can you do about it? And brainstorm with yourself. I do that. I have a journal right here. This is where I brainstorm all the time. I'm trying to process. I'm trying to figure things out. And then start to do it. Don't just end with a brainstorm. What can I do about it? I find something and I start moving forward. And then I consider the birds. They don't sit back with their lawn chairs waiting for the worms to fall from heaven. They pick, they peck, they dig, they scratch, and they move, and God provides, but it's not through passivity. And what do we need to stop doing? What do you need to release? What do you need to kind of place in the hands of the Father and say, okay, this is yours, not mine. And you let go. Because these are the words of Jesus again. Are you not much more valuable than they? And then I go, do I believe that? Do you believe that you're more valuable, that you're more valuable than anything? That the Father sees you as valuable? That even if you lose your job, even if you lose your friendship, even if the worst thing happens to you, that nothing that eternally matters is at risk. Because even if we die, we live. And to prove it, to give us confidence, Jesus didn't just say it, he lived it. He died, and then he rose, and then he stood before his disciples, and he didn't just say, well, because I live, so you will too. He said, so don't be afraid. But if we're going to always be real, and I hope we can be, it's just really hard. It's really hard work. It takes effort. And that's why we've built some space, even today. I want us to practice it. To not just hear the words of Jesus and nod and then walk out the door unchanged, but we're going to, in a minute, just 2 more songs. It's not a lot. We don't have a lot of songs. But even in that time, while those songs are playing, you've got a million responses you could do. You can sing the songs, you can stand, you can sit, you can engage or not engage. But another option is on the back table. There are there's these little pieces of paper, and on it are, what are you worried about? What are you going to do about it? What are you going to stop doing about it? And there's pens there. And it may not help you, but I just want to give that option as maybe for you, maybe it means to literally write it down, to write down that thing that you have been dragging in here like a ball and chain, and maybe it means writing it down, and maybe the thing that you've been avoiding stepping towards, and maybe I need to take that step, and maybe it means acknowledging something you can't fix and laying it down. So if you want, it's just an option. This is a choose your own adventure. You can take that piece of paper, write on it, doesn't matter what side to me, fill it out. Feel free to take it home with you and process it. Or if you want, there's also 2 jars back there. If you just like, today, I need to write it down and I just want to leave it here. And leave it here today, even if it's for only this moment that you're letting go of it. And you may have to do it later today. You may have to do it tomorrow. Sometimes it's a process of learning to let go of things, but it starts by saying, God, I'm going to lean into trusting you. And some people in your life, when you're with them, you feel calmer. I don't know, do you know people like that? When you're with them, you just feel like, yeah, I feel calmer. I feel more of who I am created by God to be. And they're like human weighted blankets. Not that you actually put them on top of you. But and they're not in denial about reality, but they have this steady presence that helps you to just face things. And others, bless their hearts, when crisis hits, they unravel like a cheap sweater, and they add stress and they escalate the panic. You love them, but they're not helping in any way. Jesus, he's the ultimate non-anxious presence, which sometimes irritated his disciples. There was this storm on the lake that was happening, and there was thunder and lightning, and waves were crashing the boat, and the disciples, they're freaking out, and they run, and they're bailing water, and they go down, and they run, and they find Jesus, and he's asleep, in REM sleep. I mean, like, he's in a deep sleep, like, he's just totally at peace, drool on the pillow kind of sleep, and when they shake him awake, Lord, don't you see we're drowning and dying? What are you even doing? And Jesus, he doesn't join the panic, he just stands up and says, peace, be still. That is who we're inviting into our hearts and our lives, in this room and in the presence. That's who we need. That's the calm, non-anxious presence of Jesus, the one who reminds us that there is a bigger story. So I'm going to pray. We've got a few more songs. If it helps you to grab one of those papers and write it down, then do that. If not, don't worry about it. So Holy Spirit, just come. If we could hear the worry in this room, if it made a sound, you'd hear it already, and you know it. And you love us enough to step right into the middle of it. And thank you, Jesus, that you don't pull away from our fear. You don't roll your eyes at our anxiety. You draw close. Enter this space right now and sit with us, free us, empower us, and remind us again that nothing that really matters, that eternally matters, is at risk. So come do your work in us, be at the center of all of it, and remind us that even as we do the work, that we don't need to be afraid.